In the last few years, we have gotten some of the best adaptations on the big screen, such as the Fallout show, The Last of Us, the Superman movie, Dune, and so many more. But in order to get to the spot that we are at, I truly believe a sacrifice needed to be made, and that sacrifice was Thor: Love and Thunder. This movie was pretty bad and had a bunch of issues like its story and even CGI. And when I first watched the movie, I thought the movie was okay and nowhere near as bad as people were making it out to seem. But once I had gotten into comic books, I read the comic this movie was based off of, and ever since that moment I have had a burning hatred for this movie. So in order for you to see what I mean, I'm going to point out the major differences from the movie and the comic, and then give you a retelling of the comic book story to give you an idea of what we missed out on. There's also a bunch of stuff in the movie that I will be ignoring because a lot of it has nothing to do with the main Thor comic, like the entire Jane Foster side plot. So without further ado, let's begin. The movie begins with Gorr and his daughter on a planet with harsh living conditions, with Gorr praying to the gods so that the gods can bless them in order for them to survive. But Gorr's daughter ends up dying anyways due to the planet's harsh living conditions. Gorr then runs into his god and begins begging him for help, but the god doesn't care and even makes fun of him, with the god telling Gorr that his only purpose is to serve his god and there's nothing for him but death. The god also tells them that they had just killed the wielder of the Necro sword, but by this time Gorr rebuked his god, leading to the god grabbing Gorr by his neck and threatening to kill him. The Necro sword would then choose Gorr, flying into his hand and killing the god. Now this is just the opening scene to the movie and I already have so many problems with it, starting with Gorr's time on the planet with his daughter, because this scene was supposed to show the reason why Gorr despises all gods. In issue number 6 of the Mighty Thor, we see Gorr as a kid with his mom telling her that he's hungry, asking why they don't eat the food around them. His mom tells him it's because they are donating it to the gods so that they can get a blessing from them. The mom also tells Gorr that despite the hard times they have went through on the planet, like Gorr's dad dying, they have to always honor the gods. But seconds later, his mom is attacked by a pack of animals, leading to her death. Later on, Gorr has a wife of his own who is pregnant. Gorr expresses to his wife his fear for himself and his family given the situation that they are in because of the planet's harsh living conditions. But his wife tells him to keep honoring the gods and they will eventually provide what they need. Only seconds later, his wife would die due to the planet's harsh living conditions. Months later, Gorr is with his kid practically begging for water. Gorr replies that they are almost there, but there never was water to begin with, leading to the kid dying and Gorr burying him in the ground, which other people get mad at him for doing because he's supposed to hang the body from the tree so it can reach the afterlife. But by this point, Gorr had had enough and begins yelling at the locals, telling them what he has been through his life, where in order to survive, he needed to eat slime off the bottom of rocks and literally eat stones. But despite all of this, his family keeps dying, with their prayers to the gods never being answered. Gorr basically rebukes the gods and says that he hates them because they will never come, which he would then get attacked and exiled from the group. This is a much better backstory for Gorr than the 2-minute clip we get at the beginning of this movie where his daughter is dying. It shows what he's been through his entire life, leading him to this point of hating the gods. It makes Gorr the God Butcher a much more compelling villain because we can understand his point of view and reasoning for his motivation. But in the movie, one second Gorr's asking for the gods' help, and in the next second he kills that god, as if all of his hate for the gods had cultivated in one moment and not over an entire lifetime. The next problem is in the opening scene, which had to do with the Necro sword, because the god tells Gorr that they had killed the wielder of the sword and they were celebrating that. But let's talk about how Gorr got the sword in the comics, because it happens after he was exiled from his group to walk the desert to a point that he was on the brink of death, and then something would fall out of the sky, crashing into the planet, which Gorr would go to investigate. He would then see two gods fighting each other, with one of the gods asking for Gorr's help. Gorr would understandably freak out on the god because every time he prayed for help he was ignored, and now this god is asking for Gorr's help. In response, Gorr then grabs the Necro sword, using it to kill the god and then begin the Gorr the God Butcher arc. The thing that really makes me upset about this entire scene in the movie is that they treat the wielder of the sword as a jobber, where in the comics the wielder of the sword is Null, the god of the symbiotes, one of the strongest beings in Marvel, being able to effortlessly decapitate celestials. Null deserves an entire video on his own, so I'm not gonna focus on him too much here, but I do find it annoying that they treated the wielder of the sword as a jobber. But I do understand that the focus of the movie isn't Null. They could have also done Gorr's entire backstory in the same amount of time of the opening scene for the movie. But anyways, let's continue to the next part. The next scene is Thor getting a message from Sif asking for his help against somebody named Gorr the God Butcher. Thor didn't know who this was but went to investigate anyways. We then get this shot in the movie of a giant god that has been killed, and this is 1-to-1 with the comic and I love it so much. What the movie sadly didn't tell you was that this god wrestles black holes, which it would have added to the intimidating factor of Gorr, showing that he's strong enough to kill this type of god. But it's really not that big of a deal. Thor would then use that information from Sif to go find Gorr the God Butcher, where he then ends up meeting and fighting Gorr both for the first time. Gorr leaves the fight fight after a little while his shadow creatures known as berserkers started to kidnap the kids. Now of course this isn't how it happened in the comics because he kind of met him twice in that run. It's hard to explain without context, so just hold on to that for now and I'll explain it later on when I recap the story at the end of the video. Trust me, it will make a whole lot more sense if I do it that way so I don't have to re-explain the story. Thor gets the idea that in order to track down Gorr the God Butcher and the kids, they should get more people to help. So they then go to Omnipotent City, the nexus of all gods. They then tell Zeus and all the other gods about Gorr the God Butcher and how they need their help to defeat him. Zeus doesn't really care about the situation, which then leads to a fight. In the comic book, Omnipotent City was only used as a library, where Thor went there to learn about Gorr and all the people that he killed using that information to track him down, which he would then follow the trail of blood left by the gods Gorr killed. And in the movie, while Thor is with Zeus in Omnipotent City, at the same time Gorr is with the kids that he kidnapped, scaring them, which is such a mischaracterization of Gorr because Gorr has never done anything like this. The only thing that he has done similar to this is try to strike fear in gods before he kills them. And also, Gorr never kidnapped kids, he kidnapped gods. And in the movie, I think that Gorr kidnapped the kids in order to use the kids' fear to make himself stronger. I don't really know, I could be wrong, so if I am, let me know in the comments. But in the comic, Gorr kidnapped the gods in order to make them slaves so that they can create the god bomb that would kill all gods. But in the movie, Gorr was trying to get to eternity to use a wish to kill all gods, which isn't as cool as making a bomb named the God Bomb to kill them all, but oh well. Thor, Jane Foster, and Valkyrie then get captured by Gorr when they're trying to save the kids, where Gorr is trying to make Thor summon his axe so that Gorr can use it to get his wish from eternity. Eventually, Thor, Jane Foster, and Valkyrie break out and begin to fight Gorr. There isn't a scene similar to this in the comics, so we're gonna jump to the final fight, where Thor goes to rescue the kids, giving them power so they could fight Gorr's shadow army. He would then go and fight Gorr, where Thor almost dies, but Jane Foster steps in to save him last second. They would continue to fight until the gate to eternity opens up and Gorr goes inside. Gorr and Thor have a conversation about love and the fact that everyone wants it, which then leads to Gorr not killing all gods and instead bringing his kid back to life, and that's basically the end of the movie. The final fight in the comics is 3 different Thors jumping a future Gorr the God Butcher. I know there's a lot of context missing, so let's talk about what happened in the comics starting from the very beginning, and then after we will compare the two one final time. The entire Gorr the God Butcher Thor story takes place in Thor God of Thunder number 1 to 11. The story opens up with Thor answering a prayer to a kid on a planet. Thor was confused on why that planet's god wasn't answering their prayers, so Thor goes to investigate to find out that the entire pantheon of gods was murdered. Thor would then get attacked by a berserker and fight it off, which after he puts the puzzle pieces together to realize that Gorr killed the gods, leading Thor going to Omnipotent City to get more information. While this is happening, Thor is getting flashbacks of when he first met Gorr the God Butcher, where Thor would find a god that had been murdered, and right after Gorr tried to kill him also, but Thor was able to fight him off, saving his life for the time being. Now we jump back to current Thor in Omnipotent City, where he goes to find information on Gorr, but instead finds the long list of all the gods that he's killed. Thor would then use it to follow and track down Gorr, finding all of the gods that he's killed. He killed so many gods that their pile of bodies stacked so high you could see it from space. Eventually, Thor would end up at a cave that he's scared to go inside of because of his history there. We would then jump back to young Thor when Gorr had captured and tortured him for 17 days straight in that same cave, but was eventually saved by his group of soldiers working with him, cutting off Gorr's arm and sending him running away. But once current Thor goes into the cave, he sees a god that he doesn't know, so he took him back to Omnipotent City. Once Thor gets there, he gets attacked by berserkers and then tracks down Gorr, where Gorr is killing a god to get its heart for reasons that we don't know at this time. Thor would end up finding Old Man Thor, who is the last god of Asgard, fighting Gorr's entire army by himself. Thor then saves him and goes to fight Gorr, but he escapes back to the future and shortly after kidnaps young Thor. Current Thor and Old Man Thor would begin to prepare to fight Gorr, while at the same time it's revealed what Gorr's plans are. The reason that he kidnapped young Thor was to make him and other gods slaves, to make a god bomb using the heart that he got from the god that he killed. The god bomb would kill any god in the universe no matter the time period. Young Thor and the other gods that were captured would attempt to blow up the god bomb and somewhat fail, but because of this, young Thor ends up meeting with current Thor and Old Man Thor, where they would all get ready to fight Gorr one final time. Now the fight between the 3 Thors and Gorr the God Butcher takes place over 3 issues, so I'm not gonna spoil all of it because I recommend you read it for yourself, and trust me, it's 3 issues of straight action and it's beautiful the entire time. But at some point during the fight, Gorr sets off the god bomb, leading to current Thor using 2 Mjolnirs and Ant by prayers, absorbing not only the god bomb but also the necro sword Gorr was getting his powers from, stopping the god bomb and Gorr. This would end up leading to Gorr's death and the end of the comic. Now of course there's a lot that I left out of the recap because I highly recommend that you go out and buy this comic. It's truly one of my favorite comics of all time, which is why I hate Thor Love and Thunder. But now let's compare compare the movie and the comics one last time. Now I won't lie, this movie was still okay despite its massive issues in the movie itself and compared to the comic. But the first thing that I want to talk about is Gore the God Butcher's portrayal in the movie, because he kidnapped the Asgardian kids in order to use their fear to get stronger, which is something that never happened in the comics. I also don't like how they glossed over his backstory, which led him to become what he is, because his backstory from the comics could have been explained in the same amount of time. And when comparing the characters' appearances, the movie doesn't look like the comic whatsoever, but I still personally like the movie design a lot. Outside of that, I think Christian Bale was a phenomenal actor for this role, just given a bad script. But the atmosphere of the movie compared to the comics is what makes me the most upset. The movie was presented as a happy, good vibes, funny movie for the entire family to enjoy. Now, I'm not saying the movie should have been R-rated whatsoever, but the movie definitely should have been more serious with maybe a couple of jokes sprinkled in. I also know that there was a status quo that needed to be reached, like the Guardians of the Galaxy story, Korg, and all that other stuff, but I still believe the movie could have been more serious with all of that. For example, the movie could have started off with the good vibes that it did, but had gotten serious once Thor realized it was Gore the God Butcher he was after. It seemed like they went completely off the main story of the comic compared to the movie, where Thor had already had a dark past with Gore being tortured and almost killed by him. And later on, Thor would come face to face with him again, and this time did what was right, showing character growth. They could have done a similar story to this in the movie, and shown character growth by making Thor take responsibility for Asgard and its people, especially after Odin had passed away and Asgard is now on Earth. But nope, now Thor is growing as a character by becoming a dad, and by coming to terms with the death of Jane Foster. Also, the Jane Foster side story of her dealing with cancer is pretty solid, especially compared to the comic run this story happens in. All in all, this movie had so much potential to be one of the best Marvel movies ever made, especially with the beautiful cinematography in the movie giving us one-to-one shots with the comics. And I know that the movie had obstacles in their way, but they were easy to overcome, like all of the status quos that needed to be met. But the main story and theme of the comic could have easily been added, minus a few things, like the different versions of Thor with all of the time traveling, and even the God Bomb part could have been replaced with eternity. I hope that you enjoyed the video, because this is my first real video on the channel, so I wasn't really sure what to expect, but now I know, so I'm going to use that to improve to make my next video better. So make sure to subscribe and let me know what y'all's thoughts are. Other than that, guys, have a nice day.